My ex said I'd never be more than someone's assistant, that I'd spend my life scheduling calls for people who actually built things. 10 years later, I quietly became the majority investor in his failing startup without him ever knowing it was me. It started in a crowded co-working space in downtown Chicago, the kind that smells like fresh paint and overpriced cold brew. Neon signs screamed slogans like "Innovate or Die," while founders paced the room rehearsing pitches under their breath. Everyone wore confidence like a tailored suit. Everyone had something to prove. I didn't. I wasn't there to pitch or perform. I didn't carry a demo, a slide deck, or a co-founder by my side. I wasn't even on the official guest list. But I'd been around long enough to know how to get into places I wasn't invited. That's one of the things they never teach you at business school, how powerful you can become when no one is paying attention. I wore my usual faded jeans, plain black t-shirt, sneakers, with the sole coming loose at the heel. No designer bag, no watch, no LinkedIn power pose, just a neutral face and quiet eyes. And just like that, I vanished. Not literally, of course. I was there breathing the same air, sipping the same burnt coffee. But no one saw me, not really. They looked through me, past me, around me. I wasn't invisible. I was dismissed. And that was exactly how I wanted it. Same voice, same performance, same hollow charm. And then I saw the name, Helix Track. I almost laughed. Of course it was them. A logistics platform that claimed to use machine learning to reimagine real-time inventory flows. Or something equally inflated. I'd heard of them quietly through whispers in founder forums and investment back channels. They were running out of money, fast, looking for bridge funding before the quarter ended. I looked up just in time to see the team take the stage. 4 guys, young, sharp, shiny. 2 looked terrified. 1 mumbled through the first few lines of the pitch. But the man in the center confident, polished, calculated. Liam. He hadn't changed. Still tall. Still charming in that practiced magazine cover kind of way. Still dressed like he was auditioning for a TED Talk. His voice cut through the room like warm butter, deep-paced strategic. He knew exactly how to time a smirk, a pause, a punchline, and the room ate it up. I watched from the shadows as he delivered the pitch like a monologue he'd written in his sleep. He dropped phrases like early traction, scalable infrastructure, and post-Series A vision. He even threw in a quote from Steve Jobs like some kind of tech gospel. What no one else saw, what I couldn't stop seeing, was the boy I used to know. The boy who told me I was too content to ever be great. The boy who thought ambition was measured in the number of LinkedIn followers or TechCrunch features. He never saw me, not back then, and not now. Because they weren't just flailing. They were bleeding out. And every wrong move they made brought me one step closer to triggering the clause. The moment I'd take control, I kept writing, not because I needed the notes, but because it grounded me. I wrote down every assumption they made, every unrealistic projection, every strategic blind spot. I didn't flinch when Liam made a backhanded joke about non-technical co-founders who just want to help. The crowd laughed. I kept writing. Around me, potential investors murmured. A few leaned forward. One woman next to me opened her email to draft a follow-up. No one noticed me. No one questioned why a woman in scuffed sneakers and no name tag was taking detailed notes like her life depended on it. I could have stood up, I could have said his name, watched his face twist in recognition, but I didn't. Because it wasn't time yet. Let them perform, let them preen. That night wasn't about me, not yet. They thought I was gone. So I sat there, I listened, I wrote, and I waited. They didn't recognize me, they didn't ask who I was or what I was doing there. And they had no idea the woman in the back row held their future in her hands. They thought they'd outgrown me. After the panel, he found me by the snack table and said, "You've got bite, but do you have fire?" I shrugged. Told him I preferred plans over pitches. That should have been the first red flag, but you know how it goes when you're young. Confidence looks a lot like leadership. Charisma feels like love, and you confuse volume with vision. We started dating 2 months later. He loved to talk about the future, our future. The companies he'd build, the rounds he'd raise, the yacht parties and legacy funds and keynote stages. He painted our life like a startup roadmap with him at the center and me, somewhere on the operations team. I didn't mind being behind the scenes. I was good at it. I didn't crave attention. I wanted control. Quiet power. The kind that didn't need applause to exist. But to Liam, that made me small. "You're too careful," he'd say whenever I questioned a leap he wanted to take. "You think too small," he'd mutter when I ran cost models that didn't support his moonshot ideas. And once, just once, during a fight that ended with me sleeping on the couch, he said it out loud, "You never had enough fire to change the world." That one stuck. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because I believed it. For a while, I started wondering if I was playing too safe, if being methodical meant I'd miss my chance. I looked around and saw people louder than me getting funding, getting praise, getting traction, even if they failed 6 months later. Meanwhile, I was working part-time, finishing my degree and researching capital efficiency models in between bartending shifts. Liam wanted to drop out, move to San Francisco, join an accelerator. He begged me to come with him, said we could build something together, but I saw what together really meant. He'd be the founder, the face, the one quoted in TechCrunch. I'd be the girlfriend who managed the books, who supported from the sidelines. A nice anecdote in his future memoir. Footnote: she believed in me before the world did. They thought I was still that girl in the back row, quiet, small, forgotten. While Liam chased investors and struggled through pivots, I got my degree. Then another. I interned with boutique funds, shadowed analysts, took notes like I was still in the back row. I said yes to jobs no one else wanted, cleaned up messy portfolios, learned what made businesses actually work. I didn't post about it. I didn't brand it. I didn't build a personal website or a Twitter following. I just kept building. Liam went from startup to startup, each one shinier than the last. His LinkedIn profile looked like a highlight reel, but I knew the gaps. I saw the layoffs, the investor exits, the broken promises tucked between phrases like restructuring and strategic redirection. He was burning out while pretending to burn brighter. I was building the room. So when I saw him walk on that stage again, all charisma and charm, pitching Helix Track like it was the next Amazon, I didn't feel bitter. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt calm because I knew something he didn't. This time, the woman in the back row wasn't just listening. She was deciding. After Liam left, I stopped chasing loud things. No more hackathons, no more demo nights, no more trying to look like a founder when I hadn't even figured out who I was. Instead, I chose something quieter. Harder, maybe. Definitely slower. I chose to study, not just in the classroom, though I did finish my degree. I went back to basics: unit economics, behavioral finance, portfolio theory. But the real lessons came after graduation, when I entered the world of real capital, where the numbers mattered more than the narrative, where founders couldn't charm their way out of a failed quarter, where silence was power. Then came the phone call. Not to me, of course. I didn't officially exist. The call went to Margot. 5 minutes later, she called me, voice dry with amusement. "They want to renegotiate," she said. "Of course they do," I replied. "They think the terms are predatory now. Say you're too involved." "I've never spoken to them," I said. "Exactly," she said. "It's making them nervous." I didn't laugh, but I did smile. Apparently someone on their board, probably a friend of a friend, had finally read the contract, understood what performance-based conversion actually meant, understood that if they missed Q2 projections by even a modest amount, they'd lose voting control. They weren't nervous. They were panicking. I didn't correct him, because while they were overlooking me, I was learning their blind spots. I watched founders pitch, fail, beg, and lie. I watched portfolios rise and collapse. I watched how some investors stayed rich, even when their companies tanked, and how others went broke even when they picked winners. And slowly, methodically, I built a map in my head. I noticed patterns. The teams that overspent in the first year rarely made it past the second. The ones with polished decks but no cash flow model, all smoke. The founders who treated admin staff badly always imploded. I built my own filter before I ever wrote a single check. Meanwhile, people like Liam ran. He was everywhere, on startup panels, in podcast interviews, guest lecturing at accelerators. He bounced from one idea to the next, pitching each like it was the answer to a world no one asked to fix. He had charisma, vision, momentum, but no patience, no discipline, and definitely no plan B. I followed his progress without following him. Google alerts, forum threads, founder gossip. I watched as Helix Track raised its seed round, got into a regional accelerator, and made a lot of noise with almost no revenue. They launched with fanfare, got some retail pilots, and then, like most overhyped logistics startups, they stalled. Integration issues, burn rate problems, investor drama. The next few days brought a flood of lawyer-approved emails full of pseudo-collaborative language like adjusted governance dynamics and alignment opportunities. They wanted to rewrite the rules, reduce the conversion clause, reinstate founder vetoes. I let them write the whole memo. Then I said no. No explanation, no softening. Just the agreement stands. But every once in a while, something aligned. A single mom building a childcare platform from lived experience. A former refugee creating fintech tools for the unbanked. A team of queer founders revolutionizing healthcare access for rural clinics. We invested. And when those founders won, I won with them. But still, I stayed low. No press, no interviews, no ego. Because I wasn't done. Not yet. Liam didn't know it, but I'd already crossed paths with Helix Track once before. They had pitched a colleague of mine at another firm and got rejected. I read the notes. Strong charisma, weak fundamentals. Would consider if burn reduced. That was a year ago. Now they were running out of options. And I had something they needed. Capital, quiet capital, smart capital, patient capital. The kind that didn't need to be thanked in public because its power wasn't about recognition, it was about control. Liam didn't take it well. The next day he messaged Margot directly. She forwarded it to me. I read it once. His tone was still polished, still confident. But the cracks showed through the phrases. We deeply value your partnership. This structure has caused some internal friction. We'd love to align more directly with active investors. Translation, we thought you were a soft check. We didn't expect you to bite back. Because while they ran toward the light, I had built my own switch. They didn't see the trap. Not because it was hidden, but because they weren't looking for it. They were too focused on surviving on spinning the story, just long enough to land one more check. That was the thing about teams like Liam's. They didn't see people like me as players, only scenery, which meant I didn't have to hide. I just had to stay quiet. When Helix Track started floating soft pitches around the angel investor circuit, I knew they were desperate. Not just tight on cash desperate. Down to 4 months of runway and team updating LinkedIn bios in secret desperate. They didn't go through big firms this time. Couldn't afford the scrutiny. Couldn't risk another no. So they turned to smaller, founder-friendly funds, people who moved fast, asked fewer questions, and didn't care about fancy board seats. They didn't know the trigger was already active. I wrote the deal myself. $800,000 bridge. Clean terms, preferred shares, no voting rights yet, liquidity protections built in. And one clause, most people skip performance-based conversion triggers. Translation. If they missed projections by 20% for 2 consecutive quarters, the entire investment converted into controlling equity. Simple, elegant, surgical. It took exactly 6 minutes for Liam to call me. He didn't say hello, didn't apologize, just said you one word. 10 years of disbelief and just enough fear to make it worth it. I thought you were gone, he said. No, I said. You just stopped looking. I let the silence sit. Let it sink in. Let it remind him that the room he thought he built now belonged to someone else. You played me, he said. No, I replied. You played yourself. I just stayed quiet long enough to let it happen. That same week, Helix Track posted a photo. Liam front and center arm around his co-founder, big LinkedIn energy. The caption talked about new strategic backing and value-aligned partnerships. It ended with a quote about perseverance. I printed it, folded the page, tucked it in the back of my notebook, because I knew it wouldn't age well. Inside their Slack, they were probably celebrating, talking about hiring again, spinning up campaigns they had shelved, planning roadmaps they couldn't afford. All of it powered by money they didn't understand from someone they couldn't see. And that's when I really started watching. Not as an outsider, as an owner in waiting. The front rows filled with tech bros in fleece vests, clutching iPads and grinning through espresso-stained teeth. They talked fast, dropped buzzwords like blockchain-enabled and AI as a service. Everyone trying to be the next unicorn. Everyone pretending they already were. I took a seat in the far back corner, close enough to observe, far enough to be ignored. I pulled out a slim moleskin notebook, old school I know, and started jotting down thoughts. Not about what was said, but what wasn't. The nervous glance between two founders, the overconfidence in projections. The slide they skipped too quickly. Even though we had lived together for 2 years, shared grocery lists, fought over Spotify playlists, even though I sat across from him at countless kitchen tables while he mapped out grand plans on napkins, and I tried to calculate the risk ratios in my head. He looked right past me in that room, just like everyone else. But every empire is built in the dark before it steps into the light. I met Liam when I was 21. Back then, ambition came in different forms. For some, it was late-night coding sprints and pitch competitions. For me, it was spreadsheets, market analyses, and silent discipline. I wasn't the loudest in the room, but I was always watching, always learning. Liam, on the other hand, didn't just walk into rooms, he owned them. At least that's what he thought. We met during a university entrepreneurship panel. He was on stage talking about a failed app idea with the swagger of someone who'd just IPO'd. I asked a pointed question from the back about his burn rate. He smirked, said, "We don't worry about nickels when we're chasing billions." Everyone laughed, except me. I said no. He didn't take it well, said I was choosing stability over greatness, that I'd spend my life working in safe little companies pushing paper, never doing anything that mattered. Then he left, and he took that version of me, the one who needed his approval, with him. The funny thing is, I didn't even cry. I just exhaled. And then I got to work. And me, I had capital, I had access, I had options. But most importantly, I had silence. I didn't need to prove him wrong, I just needed to prove myself right. I took the jobs no one wanted, the late nights at firms no one had heard of, the admin roles that let me sit in investor meetings without being expected to speak. I watched everything, took notes when people weren't looking, learned how decisions got made, not the ones written in press releases, but the ones whispered after calls ended. I worked under 3 different partners across 5 years. All men, all brilliant, all dismissive in different ways. One liked to call me kid even after I turned 30. One assumed I didn't understand cap tables, so he explained every one of them like I was in a kindergarten math class. And one just didn't remember my name. And through it all, I waited. Because I wasn't trying to win fast, I was building slow. I joined a woman-led fund focused on early-stage startups, small firm, tight team, no frills. But we were sharp, strategic, and we got into rounds others ignored because we saw what they didn't: grit over gloss, math over mood boards. Eventually, I started leading diligence calls. I sat across from teams who looked me in the eye and still talked down to me. I listened to 20-something CEOs tell me what real ambition looked like. I listened to Ivy League bros explain their vision for redefining labor markets without once mentioning ethics or workers. I asked quiet questions, took thorough notes, and passed on most deals. So when Helixtrack appeared again, this time in a group pitch event for struggling startups seeking bridge funding, I didn't hesitate. I called a friend who ran a shell fund, small, agile, discreet. I asked if I could syndicate a deal through them under a different name. No connection to me, no photo, no profile, just terms. Clean, non-negotiable. And then I showed up once again in the back of the room. That's where I came in. Or rather, where my name didn't. I'd worked with Margot for years, an operator turned quiet power player, with a network of shell funds stretching across Delaware, Toronto, and London. We had a system. If I found something that needed clean hands, she'd run point. Her face, my terms. It kept things simple, invisible. And this time, it was exactly what I needed. They signed within a week. No negotiation, no red lines. Just an email from Liam, too enthusiastic, too relieved, thanking Margot's firm for believing in their vision. I stared at the message for a moment, then I closed it. He still had no idea who held the pen. You learn a lot when you sit still and listen. The product wasn't improving, the tech was bloated, the dev team was disengaged, and Liam, he was focused on getting quoted in tech blogs instead of fixing churn. I joined one of their investor update calls under a different name. Margot did the introductions. Liam did the talking. He talked about early signs of virality, talked about burn being optimized, talked about momentum while quietly dodging retention numbers. He painted a future that was already slipping through his hands. I didn't interrupt, just took notes, logged every missed target, every spin, every excuse. But they never understood that I was never trying to be the loudest voice in the room. And now I owned the keys. They say founders shouldn't micromanage investors, but desperate ones do. About 6 weeks after the deal closed, I started noticing the shift. It was subtle at first: investor updates that sounded just a little too cheerful, a little too eager. Weekly emails became bi-weekly, then monthly, then silence. The last one said strong pipeline. More updates soon. More updates never came. Meanwhile, my dashboard told a different story. One pilot had already been dropped. 2 major clients were behind on payments. Engineering costs had doubled. And Burn was setting records. I didn't call, I didn't email. I let them sink themselves. That's the thing about men like Liam. They love control, but only when they're the ones holding the leash. The moment it tightens around them, they flail. They called a founder meeting. I wasn't invited. They proposed raising a fast, messy follow-up round to dilute the convertible shares and undercut the clause. They even floated buying out the mystery investor, entirely assuming it was some quiet old man who would fold for a 1.5x return. They didn't know I'd been on every call, read every line item, listen to every lie. Helix Track had missed their target by 28% last quarter. One more miss, and the clause would convert to a controlling stake, voting rights included. I waited exactly 3 days. Then I sent the notice. No warning, no explanation. Just a single PDF with a clean title at the top. Notice of intent to exercise performance-based conversion rights. And this time I signed it with my real name. Not Margot's, not an alias. Mine. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't gloat. I didn't bring up the names he used to call me or the time he said I lacked fire. Because by the end of that call, he finally understood. I was the fire. And I had just burned his illusion of control to the ground. The meeting took place on a Thursday. I chose that on purpose. Thursdays feel non-threatening. Too close to Friday for people to expect confrontation. It made them unprepared. The subject line of the invite was simple: quarterly governance session. Investor update required. No panic, no drama, just bland enough to lower their guard. The boardroom was virtual. Of course this was a post-pandemic startup with remote everything, including accountability. They joined one by one, boxes popping up across the screen. Liam was last as usual. He was always late when he felt threatened. Always early when he needed something. He smiled when he logged in. Fake, calculated, twitching just a little around the jaw. I didn't return the smile. Instead, I started the meeting with a slide deck, 3 slides, no graphics. Just numbers. Revenue, burn, client churn. All worse than projected. Then I brought up the terms. As per the agreement signed, February 8th, I said our fund has the right to convert preferred shares into a majority voting block effective immediately. That clause was activated after the second consecutive quarter of missed targets. You were notified last week. Today we vote. They blinked. No one interrupted. Not at first. Then the CTO, a quiet guy named Jordan, unmuted and asked hesitantly, "Wait, you're the fund?" I nodded. He looked like someone had punched the breath out of him. Liam spoke next. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice slow, careful. "This company still has potential. We just need better alignment. We can bring you into strategy, give you a seat at the table, but this is hostile." I tilted my head slightly. "No," I replied. "This is structural. You signed it. I just followed through." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "So what, you want to replace us? All of us? You think you can do what we couldn't, I think." I said calmly that a company with sound technology deserves leadership that understands more than headlines and hype. And I think a board vote will clarify what's best for the business. The vote took less than 10 minutes. Each board member received a form. 1 item: motion to remove current executive team and appoint interim leadership. The irony: they'd diluted themselves so much during their fundraising scramble that none of them held enough equity to block it. Not Liam, not his co-founders, not even their angel investor friend who tried to stall with legalese. The votes came in one by one. Yes, 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 abstain, yes, unanimous. Even the CTO didn't vote against it. He looked exhausted, defeated, maybe even relieved. Liam stared at the screen, frozen, like he couldn't quite process what had happened. "Is this revenge?" he finally asked. "Is that what this is about?" "No," I said softly. "This is repair." Silence fell, not the angry kind, the kind that feels final. I ended the meeting with 1 sentence: transition documents will follow by end of day. Thank you for your time. And just like that, I signed off. Later that week, I appointed an interim CEO, someone from a company we'd backed before. Clean track record, strong values, focused. She didn't ask for credit, she just got to work. I kept the engineering team, rebuilt product strategy, cut unnecessary partnerships, rewrote the roadmap from the ground up. No drama, no noise, just action. Meanwhile, Liam, he posted a vague message on LinkedIn about taking time to recalibrate and reflect. He thanked his supporters, promised to share learnings soon. He never mentioned me, never mentioned how he lost his company to the woman he once said lacked fire. But I didn't need him to. I had the cap table, I had the board, I had the keys. And the next time someone asked me how I got into investing, I didn't tell them about Liam. I told them I liked solving problems no one else noticed until it was too late. I didn't post about it. No vague tweets, no anonymous threads, no lessons I've learned as a silent founder medium essay with carefully curated hashtags. That's never been my style. The day after the vote, I went to work like usual. Same tea, same notebook, same corner desk in my quiet home office. No fanfare. Just the steady, focused rhythm of systems being rebuilt under my direction. People kept asking if I felt victorious. That word made me flinch. Because this wasn't a game. It wasn't about winning. It was about remembering who I was before people like Liam taught me to doubt it. I kept the Helix Track logo the same for now. Changed the tagline, though, quietly. On the website's footer, we removed the phrase redefining the future. Replaced it with one that felt more honest, built to last. Not to hype. I didn't need them to know it was me. I didn't need to stand over their downfall and narrate it. I didn't even need to send Liam a follow-up message. Because the real power is when the people who dismissed you start replaying every moment they ignored you and wonder how long you were watching. Sometimes I imagined what Liam must have thought when he saw my name on that document. If he remembered the kitchen table where I once sat budgeting our groceries while he mapped out disruption strategies with a Sharpie. If he remembered calling me too risk-averse or boring or worse, forgettable. If he realized I never stopped moving, just moved differently. I wasn't chasing a spotlight. I was building a switch. And now I didn't need to flip it on. I was the current. A few founders reached out to me afterward. Whispered admiration, quiet praise. A few female operators asked if I'd mentor them or at least look over their pitch decks. I did. I kept every call under 30 minutes. No fluff, just strategy. One of them said, "You don't sound like the kind of person who needs revenge." I smiled. "Good," I said, because the best kind doesn't look like revenge at all. Instead of rebranding the company around my name, I kept it lean and focused. We dropped the vanity hires, redirected funds toward product, streamlined ops. Within 2 quarters, we were cash flow positive. Within 4, we had 2 acquisition offers. I turned them down. I wasn't ready to hand it over. Not yet, because there was something satisfying about walking into something broken and quietly, methodically making it whole. And something even more satisfying about never needing to tell the world why you did it. Let them wonder, let them scroll LinkedIn trying to piece together the story. Let them whisper at conferences, ask around, speculate. Let them live with the knowledge that someone they dismissed had the power to rewrite everything and chose not to rub it in. Because this wasn't about showing off. This was about showing up. And I did. Silently, completely, on my own terms. A few months ago, I walked past the building where Liam and I used to dream. It wasn't a headquarters or a pitch stage. Just a cheap cafe near campus with wobbly tables and terrible Wi-Fi. We used to meet there to plan our futures, his in billion-dollar valuations, mine in spreadsheets that actually balanced. I hadn't been back in years. It was gone. Replaced by a smoothie bar with pastel chairs and hanging succulents. Trendy, empty. I stood outside for a moment, watching my own reflection in the glass. Not because I missed it, but because it reminded me of a girl I used to be. A girl who thought she needed permission to take up space, who thought being underestimated meant she had to work twice as hard just to earn credibility. She had no idea how powerful she was going to become. Sometimes I still see her. In women sitting alone in the back row of boardrooms, scribbling quietly while louder voices fill the space. In analysts with ideas sharper than the men leading the call. In founders who are told they're not ready, not polished, not scalable. They remind me why I never yelled, why I never chased applause. Because silence can build things no one sees coming. And sometimes it's the sharpest power you can wield. Now and then, I still get emails from Liam's old contacts, investors, operators, accelerators, asking if I'd be open to advising some of their portfolio teams. The tone is always polite, slightly curious, a little cautious. They don't know exactly who I am, but they know they missed something. That's the thing about staying quiet long enough. When you do move, people feel it. Not because you shout, but because the floor shifts under their feet, and they look up wondering when the balance of power changed. I don't answer most of them, not out of spite, just because I don't need to anymore. I'm already building the next thing, already mentoring the next woman who sits in silence and notices everything, already funding the ideas no one takes seriously until they're too big to ignore. No, I never confronted Liam again, never sent him a look where I am now message, because the truth is, I never built this for him. I built it for me, for the women like me, for the girls they still overlook. And I'll keep building, quietly, unapologetically, completely, because they mocked my simplicity. And I turned it into strategy.